Hello to those of you who are watching this video, whether it be on the website or over at YouTube. This is Barbara C. Phillips. I'm a nurse practitioner and founder of NPBO. And in today's podcast episode, I am talking with Sharon Burch. Now, Sharon is the Liberated Nurse Entrepreneur who has a business in working with nurse entrepreneurs who need some coaching or some ideas and just how to get started in business. A lot of the people she works with are nurses, while, of course, in PBO, we work with mostly nurse practitioners. But in today's episode, what Sharon and I are talking about is the Liberated Nurse Entrepreneur Summit that is coming up very shortly. And so you'll hear us talk about that. There are 20 speakers, including myself, and we'll get into a lot of business ideas and the different kinds of businesses. So for my listeners who are nurse practitioners, don't dismiss this because we're talking about the non-NP type role, because there are so many different things and ideas that you can walk away from this with, where you can add something to your practice or even just pivot altogether. So thank you for taking the time to listen and watch, and I'm going to let the interview go ahead and play through. And take a look in the notes below the video so that you can find different links to the summit, to each of our websites, and any other way that we can help. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, please go ahead and leave us a like, subscribe to the channel, and we'll be bringing you more content. So thanks. So let's just dive right on in to this episode, number 92 of the NP Business Matters podcast. So Sharon, I am so glad that you are here today so that we can talk about the Liberated Nurse Entrepreneurs Summit. That's a mouthful. And I'd like to hear from your perspective. This is your summit. You created it, and it's for nurses of all licensure, I believe.
Yes.
And you have several speakers. And by the way, I'm pleased to be a speaker that we'll be talking about that.
Honored that you are. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But how did this whole idea of this summit come around?
Well, Barbara, it came as a little whisper in my ear or in my mind. Of course, I've been to summits, other people's summits. I think we all have. And I didn't see myself producing one. But as I've been assembling my business, which is the Liberated Nurse Entrepreneur, it just came to me several times. It's important to bring together nurse entrepreneurs online in a visible way so that they know about each other, and so that nurses in direct care and in academia and in administration know about what is happening in the nurse entrepreneur sector.
Right.
We're all sort of doing our own thing, and we have little communities around us, but we're busy, very busy, and
Yes.
We don't all know each other. And I believe that together we have such an opportunity to be visible, amplify each other's voices, and learn from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's my mission. I was very aware of that, but I hadn't thought of the summit. When it kept coming to me as, like I say, as a whisper, I thought, okay, I better just look into this. And I try to follow those whispers if I can. So that's what I'm doing. Yeah.
And I think it's such a good idea because it is so true. I mean, when entrepreneurship, first of all, isn't for everybody.
Right.
But for those that are, so many of us are operating solo, and we don't have the community around us like if we were in a hospital or in a large clinic or some sort of a situation where we're actually working physically next to one another and with one another. And so I think this is a good idea. And looking at the list of the other speakers, I don't know some of these folks.
How about
And
that?
and I've been doing this for uh, a long time,
Yeah.
since
Yeah.
2007. So,
Yeah. And that's a long
um,
time in
yeah,
this particular endeavor. Even though we've had nurse entrepreneurs going way, way back to Florence Nightingale and Mary
right,
Seacrest and others, we, as far as modern day entrepreneurial nurses, it's um, it's been very quiet and sort of gathering steam. I don't want to say underground, but with dots around the map, solo
right,
dots.
right.
And so it's a joy to me to help
Yeah.
invite a lot of nurse entrepreneurs into this one place so they can be seen and heard.
Mhm.
And, uh, and it's been quite an amazing thing for me to get to talk to each
Mhm.
one.
Yeah. Yeah. And, for anybody who doesn't know, we did one many years ago. It is a lot of work. So kudos to you for pulling this off because
Thank you.
it's a tremendous amount of work. And one of the things as you were talking that I thought about was way back when I first started questioning as an RN, how could I what could I do and how could I do my own thing? And even as, I was doing a lot of agency work, because the hospital where is critical care is doing 7 on, 7 off. And it's like, oh, let me pick up a few extra dollars to put aside. And I wanted to be my own agency. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, why pay somebody else? And
Mm-hmm.
it was almost impossible it was just naysayers everywhere. And it was
Oh,
impossible to get any information
yeah.
about a nurse being an entrepreneur. And even as a nurse practitioner, I was naysayed all over the place as well. So
Yes.
fortunately, there's still some naysayers, but fewer.
Much fewer. Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
And, it's been interesting, Barbara, as I've talked to the 20 nurses that I've interviewed, many of them said, well, it's that kind of like there's two groups. There's a group that started decades ago, and then there's a group that started during COVID.
yeah.
And COVID seems to have cracked something open in our perception of what the problems are and what our power is to actually contribute to the change. And
Mhm.
so, yeah. So, and then of course the internet. I think the COVID part gave us pause. It gave us some time
Mhm.
to reflect, and it also gave us more familiarity with tools like Zoom.
Mhm.
And doing that, it wasn't a. It suddenly became not a huge deal to do it. Everybody, we were all doing it all the time,
Well,
and so
yeah,
the barrier came down.
and I think COVID, for COVID was a catalyst for a lot of things, a lot of changes in our society. And I think for some nurses, they suddenly and even and nurse practitioners who had their own practices, some of them ended up closing
Hmm.
because they couldn't see patients, they couldn't get them in. A lot of even larger clinics had closed. And so people started looking around, well, what else can I do? And what can I do? With the huge push in telehealth during COVID, I think that opened up a lot of eyes. Well, perhaps I could do this or I could do that. And so I
Hmm.
think um, COVID was horrible, and it was also in many ways there was a silver lining to it. So it was both good and bad. So you mentioned 20 nurses.
20 nurse entrepreneur. Well, there's two that are not nurse entrepreneurs, but the other 18 are. And so it'll stretch across 5 days. And day one, we have a theme for each day. And I'll back up a little bit more. Our overarching theme for the entire summit is healing ourselves and thriving in business. Okay. Because I feel both are important. We don't want to leave ourselves out of the equation.
Yeah.
And we have some habits and mindsets and things coming. If we're coming from any place, other place in nursing, whether it's direct care, academia, or administration, we've had a lot of limits put on us, and we've had those limits had an advantage that we were safe in them as long as we followed the rules.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when we become entrepreneurs, most of that is gone. We still have our state Nurse Practice Act, our scope and standards of practice, our competencies. But as far as stepping out and being in business, doing business, we don't have those policies and procedures in place. And so I see a lot of nurses floundering a little bit and not, they were very competent and confident in their specialties. And they bring those specialties with them as an entrepreneur, but somehow they're diluted. The confidence is diluted in the face of all the things that they still need to learn
Right.
about business. So anyway, that's part of the healing ourselves part, as coupled with thriving in business. I'm a holistic nurse. That's my specialty, in addition to being an entrepreneurial nurse. And part of the holistic nursing scope and standards of practice is that one of our core values is self-care. And so whether we're a nurse healer, a nurse coach, or any other role that holistic nurse might play, we strive to put ourselves at equal standing as our patient or client. And that when we're present with them, we also strive to be present with ourselves. When we're taking care of them, we're also striving to take care of ourselves. And I know we don't all do it all the time, but I feel like it's a very important thing to be aware of and to be intentional at weaving into our practice.
Absolutely. That needs to go beyond holistic nursing. That needs to go into not even just nursing, that needs to go into humankind all the way around.
Yeah.
One of the things that I used to tell young mothers that would come into the clinic, they're frazzled. They've got, a couple of, 3 kids under the age of 5, and it's like, if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of these kids. And it's true. So no matter what area that we work in life, whether we're a parent or we're a healthcare provider of some sort. So
Yes.
why don't you tell us about day one?
Okay. Yes. So back to day one. Day one, the theme is, what is holistic entrepreneurial nursing and why is it important? And the keynote, the opening speaker will be Dr. Margaret Erickson, who's the CEO of the American Holistic Nurses Credentialing Corporation. And that company creates and runs all of the holistic nursing certification tests and the nurse coach certification test. So Margaret is a friend and a mentor. I love her dearly, and she is so wise. And that was fun to share her with this audience.
Oh, it sounds good. Yeah.
And then the second day the theme is, who needs what nurses have and how can we serve them? And so in that day, there's a variety of speakers. There's a speaker that is a nurse, 2 nurses who developed a wellness app called Fifth Window for nurses, and it's quite innovative. There is a nurse who works with writing. She offers writing for nurses to do self-care and self-healing. And then there's a nurse coach who has contracted with corporations to bring nurse coaching into corporations with their EAP programs. And she actually is a mother of 3 special needs kids.
Wow.
And so she came at her nurse coaching practice with that focus, wanting to help other parents of special kids. Excuse me. And then as she got to thinking about her niche, she realized that parents of special kids are working as employees in corporations and probably don't have much support. And she did a little research and found that was true. So she's developed her business around that.
Oh, that sounds good. Be
Day
interesting.
three, and actually there's 4 speakers on each day. So I'm only giving you a few teaser highlights. I'm not telling you about everyone. Um, Day 3 is completely focused on nurse coaching because nurse coaching is another way for nurses to have an independent or group practice, similar to the way nurse practitioners have had with their advanced practice role and advanced practice license. Nurse coaching just involves certification of CE type of course, about 60 hours, plus practice, supervised practice. And it can go anywhere. I mentioned one of my speakers on the previous day that's into corporations. It can just go anywhere, including into hospitals and coaching staff in hospitals. So on day 3, I'm interviewing 4 of the nurse coaching school owners. There's actually 5 schools, and I'm interviewing 4 of those. And they're talking about nurse coaching and how that part of nursing is growing.
Right. Yeah. And we've actually had Lynn on a podcast before.
Oh, good.
So yeah. Yeah.
Right. And her partner, her business partner, Teresa Walding.
Yes. Yeah. We've had them both. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So day 4 is the day that you're speaking, and I am too. We're both speaking on day 4. And the theme is, how can we navigate the scary things that hold us back from starting a business? And so most of the scary things are inside of us. There are definitely some things to be aware of and be knowledgeable about that are in our external environment too. So we talk about both of those, the internal and the external. And
and there's certainly a lot.
There is. We could have done a whole summit on that, Barbara.
Right. Just on that, because, and it's, I don't know about you, but it's just because it's scary doesn't mean that it can't be done, but it's just understanding the hoops and the what you're going to have to jump through and what you're going to have to overcome, and that knowledge is power, right?
Yes, both of those. Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes our power scares us too. Yeah. So there's like layers of this, I find. I was listening to a wonderful video last night. It was Michelle Obama and Oprah Winfrey talking about Michelle's book, The Light That We Carry. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I am aware of the book. It's on my list. I have not read it.
It's on my list too. But they were talking about the fear mind. And apparently this is something that Michelle talked about in her book. And to how important it is for us to recognize when we're in our fear mind and use our tools, get out our toolkit to navigate our way through that narrow place of the fear mind. And so I think that's very important for nurse entrepreneurs as well.
It is. And I think it's also important for people to be aware that it's there and it's normal and it's natural and we all deal with it, and it's not, we fix it and we move on. It comes back.
Yes. And that we can ask for support.
Yeah.
A lot of times just speaking our fear out loud to another person somehow is like turning the light on the shadows, then just
yeah.
And so so fear and fear of the legal position that we're in is and also fear of the financial situations that we can find ourselves in. Those are the type of fears that we want to pay attention to and do be proactive. Look
Absolutely.
ahead. Don't put ourselves in a corner or in a dangerous situation. Be proactive and be plan, project, and you talk about that in your interview. Do you want
Yeah.
to say a few words about
Yeah. Well,
that?
it's one of the things that I have seen sometimes that NPs do is there's not always a very realistic idea of what's involved with business. Obviously, for any nurse of any licensure, we don't come to this with a background in business. We haven't been taught business. And so there's a lot of things that we are unaware of. And sometimes we don't really plan out or think thoroughly about the financial picture. We go from making a really, in some cases, very healthy salary to wanting to do business and thinking we're going to recreate that salary within a few short months. And that doesn't happen.
No.
And if we just look at business statistics in general, most businesses are going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to be proactive. We have to make sure that we can take care of ourselves, our families, as well as our business, and just paying attention to money. Like I think I might have told you one of my first talks that I did for one of the state organizations, somebody came up to me afterwards and said, "Why are you always talking about money?" And in that conversation, that same person said, "Well, I would never do this. I have my salary." And it's like you're not going to be happy if your employer isn't paying you appropriately.
Yes.
Don't, and if you are in charge of bringing in that money and making sure it's coming in, aren't you going to be talking about it? Aren't you going to be paying attention to it? So that's just one of the things that we need to be prepared for, because this is new territory for most nurses that go into this area.
It is, Barbara. And unless the nurse has grown up in an entrepreneurial family, which some do, and then they have a whole different comfort level with
Right.
asking for money, talking about money and business and things.
Yeah, they definitely have a different perspective.
Yeah, but most of us feel in the dark about it. We feel shy about asking for money and we feel shy about setting our prices. It comes from a caring ethic. We don't want to exploit people. We don't want some people to be left out. We really want everybody to receive the services. And then, so how do we rectify all that business around money? And uh, there's a learning curve to it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there again, we need support and we need to be able to experiment with different uh, ways of talking about money and handling it.
Mhm. Yeah.
There's a lot to
And
it.
yeah, and I think the first thing, regardless of when we all, myself included, I thought everybody should have access to healthcare. These hospitals are making too much money. They don't need to charge so much money for XYZ. And
Yeah,
it's true, they don't need to charge so much money for XYZ, but we also have to realize healthcare costs money.
it does.
It costs money. And, traditionally, nursing, first of all, has been listed as a cost factor
Yes,
for hospitals and organizations, not income generating.
yes.
And so it's a mindset thing.
It's a big mindset thing.
Yeah.
And it's not just a switch we can flip either.
Mm-mm.
It's something that, uh, in my experience and in coaching nurse entrepreneurs, I see us needing to pause and take stock of, well, what is our own relationship with money? And what were we taught in our families growing up about money? Who deserves it? Who doesn't? What activities are can um, are okay to get the money and what aren't?
Mhm.
And And how much is a nurse worth anyway?
Mhm.
We kind of think about our hourly wages, and that's not nearly all of our cost when we go into business.
No.
So we have a whole different picture to look at when we go into business in
Right,
terms of
right. Boy, I think that was key though when you said, what is our worth?
what is our worth.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
As nurses, that's something we don't often, I think we think more about it today than
Yes.
when I came up. Um, I just wanted whatever they were going to give me. I was so naive. And I'm talking about my first job as a nursing assistant, not a certified nursing assistant, a nursing assistant. So goes way, way back. So
Yes.
we have day 5,
Then we have day
which looks
5,
good.
and it's what's possible when entrepreneurial nurses innovate to meet a need. And so I have some future looking nurse entrepreneurs and looking at the big picture, and the also the dean and vice president of Purdue Global Nurse School of Nursing will be one of my guests that day, Melissa Birdie. And she has been an entrepreneur and probably will be again, she said, in the future. Right now, she's, in a nursing academia administration and really encouraging nurses to be innovative, to learn about business, and to apply their innovative ideas, whether they're staying in a healthcare organization as an employee or stepping out.
Right.
And in fact, there's a word for that. So when we're outside of it, when we're not an employee, when we're working for ourselves, everyone knows we're entrepreneurs. When we are still an employee and we're innovating, we're intrapreneurs.
Right.
And I think that word adds to the conversation and helps us clarify even more how we can have this role of being change makers and in a very stepwise way, using our nursing process to notice a problem, to assess it, to test an intervention, evaluate it, and the whole thing, and then rinse and repeat. Because nobody with an idea gets it 100% right the first time. Iteration is the name of the game.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
want to fail forward. We want to take, whenever we don't quite hit the mark of what we hope for, look for the lessons and then rinse and repeat, go
A-
forward.
Absolutely. And there really isn't, I like to look at it that it's not failure anyway. That's it's
Not really,
it's
not.
a lesson.
Yes.
And it's okay, so what do I need to change with that? And next,
Yeah. And next,
just
right.
next.
Let's just go again. Yeah. Yeah.
So the summit is taking place June 24th through 28th.
Yes. That's the 5 days. And I've just recently added a special little kickoff party on the Sunday evening right before the summit. So that's June 23rd, and it will be at 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific on Sunday the 23rd. And it'll be on Zoom. Everyone who's registered for the summit will receive the invitation and the link to come to the kickoff party. And I'm inviting all the speakers to be there. There's a few that can't, but most of them I think are coming, and the participants. And I think we just can have an informal kind of fun meet and greet, and the chat can, go firing away. People can meet each other and introduce themselves and that kind of thing. So I hope the listeners will register for the summit and come on the 23rd as well as throughout the week.
Yeah, yeah. I think it'll be really good. And I certainly encourage people to register for it. We will have the links in the show notes. We'll have it under the video. We'll be putting this out everywhere. So you will have everything that you need to join all of us and all of the speakers. And like I said earlier, there are some speakers, some I've heard of and I know of.
Mhm.
They've certainly been around a while, like Keith and Lynn, but that some are new to me. So I'm going to be looking forward to it because the one thing I think we all need to know as entrepreneurs, this is no different than we always have to keep learning as nurses, no matter what kind of nursing that we do, what kind of
Mhm.
healthcare we do. It's an ongoing, never-ending process of learning. And it is exactly the same thing for being in business. It's
Absolutely.
I mean, the whole thing that I strive for is teaching NPs the business of being a nurse practitioner.
Mhm.
And this is no different. Teaching nurses how to do business. It's there and it's ongoing and it's never ending. And so I do hope everybody will join us. It'll be a lot of fun.
It really will be. And I want to share every speaker gives at least one or two tips that they think would help
Yeah.
nurse entrepreneurs who are starting out. And so that is worth a lot to have 20 experienced nurse entrepreneurs, sort of all in one room in a virtual way, giving each having a chance to give you their top tips. There's really a lot
Yeah.
of value
Yeah.
there.
There's a wealth of information and
Yeah.
we all come at it from such different perspectives.
Yeah,
And with any of this, it's sometimes all we need to hear is something that triggers something else in us.
that's right.
And it triggers an idea, or it's like, oh, that's what I've been looking for.
Yes.
Or I didn't, I could do it this way. Or, well, that's interesting. But what happens if I do this along with it?
Yeah,
And so this is the kind of stuff that this is what happens in a mastermind a lot of times.
that's true. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like a
Right. It's like a giant
1%.
mastermind
Yeah.
that you get to have. Uh, Actually, it's an advantage to a mastermind because it's not all happening at once. It's
Right.
going to be dripped across the week. And so I will mention that part. Each day's worth of videos is only available for 48 hours. So don't think you'll wait to the end of the week and watch them all because day one will only be present for day one and day two, and so on. However, we're all busy, so we didn't want to make it too hard. So the recordings are available
Mhm.
and it's extremely minimal price.
Right.
So if you register, you'll see the opportunity to get the recordings, and then you'll have access for an entire year. And you'll have both the video recording and the audio recording if you prefer to just listen. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
as well as the handouts and any gifts and things like that that the speakers have
Yeah.
given. So,
Yeah. I almost always get recordings when I go to summits.
yeah,
Because you can't watch it all. I can't anyway.
not take it in all at
So
once.
so is there anything else that you think we haven't covered that we need to mention here before we wrap up?
Well, I guess I just now said something, but I went over it so quickly. I'll say it a little more clearly. It deserves it. Each speaker does have a gift that they're offering to the
Mhm.
audience. And so it's given through a link on the webpage right by their interview recording. And when you click that, you'll go to the speaker's website and follow their instructions to receive their gift. And
Yeah.
so there's value, not only in the interviews and the tips they give there, but also all of the gifts are aligned with helping nurses claim their power. And if they choose to use it as an entrepreneur uh, step forward, then that's also there in the gifts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
exciting.
Oh boy, Christmas.
I know, Christmas in June.
There we go. All right. So I really appreciate you joining me today to talk about the summit. And for all of you listening and watching, I hope you'll join us and you'll find the links wherever you find this podcast. So I'm excited about this.
Great, me too. Barbara, thank you for inviting me
Oh,
on
you're
your podcast
welcome.
today.
You're welcome. It's been my pleasure. And I know you and I will be talking again soon. And again, for everybody, all the links will be with this video so that you can also contact Sharon directly if you need to.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, and my personal business, Liberated Nurse
Oh, we didn't talk about
Entrepreneurs.
that.
I should give you my website at least. I would be remiss as an entrepreneur not to promote that. So yeah, my website is liberatednurse.com. And my primary program is the Liberated Nurse Business Incubator, which is a program to support it's education and coaching to support beginning entrepreneurs. And we base everything on the Nurse Practice Act, the Nurse Scope and Standards of Practice, and helping you then build on that base to craft a business that fits you as an individual person and fits your lifestyle and your constraints and your gifts. So that's our main program. I also am available to coach entrepreneurs, nurse entrepreneurs one-on-one. So
All right. Thank you. Thank you for mentioning that. And I'm sorry we didn't do that a little bit earlier. But
no,
anyway, once again, everyone, thank you so much for taking time out. And I hope to see you on the summit.